Welcome to Ground Truth. Join Sam Faddis as he looks for truth from those on the ground, in the middle of the action with key insights regarding critical national and international issues. Listen for discussions and interviews on national security, terrorism, politics, espionage, the paranormal, and weapons of mass destruction.
Welcome, I'm Sam Faddis. This is Ground Truth. Today we're talking Venezuela, but maybe more than talking Venezuela, we're talking socialism, which I think, regardless of where you are in the political spectrum, these days there seem to be a lot of people running around the United States telling us that socialism is the answer to political and economic problems. And, anytime you buy a product, you buy a car, you buy a house, you buy an appliance, the first thing you do is you find out what are the experiences of other people that other people have had with that. Same thing, I think, should apply to political philosophy, right? If somebody's going to sell you socialism, maybe it'd be a good idea to listen to somebody who's been down that road and knows it firsthand. So with us, we're going to have a great guest who is a political activist in the United States now. He's with the Fund for American Studies, Andres Guilarte, whose name I'm sure I just terribly butchered, who has graciously given us some of his time. Andres, welcome.
Hello, Sam. Welcome. Actually, you say the last name really well, so don't worry.
Okay, well, that is because of your coaching. We both know that. That's all right. So, look, I want to talk about Venezuela. I want to talk about socialism. But as I indicated to you when we were talking off air a little bit ago, the first thing I always try to do with a radio program is get people to understand context, background, like what the heck are we talking about and why should I care? So, for the average American who maybe can find Venezuela on the map, pre-socialism, before socialism, what was Venezuela? Or what are you talking about?
All right, well, first of all, we have to make something clear. Before hard socialism, which was with Chavez in 1999, because before Chavez, we had like a light socialism, where we had stable country, with after the 60s, we used to be like the most prosperous country in Latin America. I mean, in the 70s, the GDP per capita of Venezuela was higher than Spain, Greece, and Israel. Something that you can never imagine. A country where you see all these images right now of people eating garbage. A country like that could have been such a rich country before. We used to have like a lot of prosperity in terms of natural resources because, as you know, Venezuela is an oil producer. Right now, oil industry is like in the bottom of its capacity. But we used to be like a major reference in the oil industry. And not just oil, we also have plenty of other minerals that makes Venezuela such a rich country. But right now, well, we have seen the news and Venezuela is not its best moment.
So we have this country, I mean, again, as you just noted, I mean, huge oil-producing nation. I mean, natural wealth, it's amazing. Okay, so that's where we were. Under socialism, I mean, in a minute I want to walk through how we got there, but just to draw the contrast real sharply. So we have this very prosperous, very optimistic past. What's the reality now in Venezuela?
Well, we are a country that we still have the vast majority of oil resources in the world. We have more oil than Saudi Arabia. I mean, in terms of stocks. You know what I mean? When I mean stock is like the underground oil, we have more than any other country in the world. But right now, with all these rich resources, you have a country with tearing apart all the political disputes that you have seen in the news of Guaido trying to fight against Maduro. You have a country where almost 90% of population lives in extreme poverty. And right now, with all the problems in the economic sphere, the average Venezuelan earns less than $2 per month in my country right now. So, I mean, I just had 1 year. I just had 1 year, like 2 days ago here in the U.S., and I have a college degree. If I were in Venezuela right now, with my college degree, I wouldn't be able to make not even like $20 a month really working every single day, every single hour. So you have a country that even with all his natural resources, people is not able to find a way to be prosperous and have a happy life.
So what is it that socialism has done to Venezuela that produced this? How did this happen?
Well, when Chavez arrived to power in 1999, he started a transformation of the whole system. So he started changing everything he could, even changed the name of the country. Because before Chavez, we were called the Republic of Venezuela, in transforming into the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. So he started changing everything he could to fit his actual goals, which were the socialist policies. And what socialist policies? Well, start taking over some industries and take them to the state. Like, for example, the oil industry, it was like a mixture, but at the point of Chavez, a mixture between private and the public sector. But when Chavez arrived, it completely went to the public sector. And not just the oil industry, the agriculture industry, the steel industry, every single industry that was in private hands, Chavez just took it to the state. And in the long run, before he even died in 2013, all these industries went to a bankruptcy because the state is not allowed to get all these industries because it's usually, it's not efficient when it comes down to manage this industry. So that was the first step, just start taking over all the major traditions in our system and just change it completely to fit these policies.
So he takes over. I mean, we have a socialist government that takes over and nationalizes all of these industries and runs them into the ground. But
right.
It is now, Chavez came to power what year again?
1999.
Okay. So we got 20 years of this, over 20 years
yes.
of this now. So
yes.
Let's start with this. How does he sell this to the people? When he comes to power in 1999, what is it he tells the people that allows him to take power?
When he took power, the problem was that the government before Chavez, in the 80s and the 90s, they did so bad that people didn't trust anymore the politicians. And before Chavez, we used to have a bipartisan system like you have here. We had two major parties, and they were like terrible in the government. So people didn't trust them anymore. Chavez came in like the theory guy, like a new guy with a new... And Chavez actually, in his campaign, never spoke about directly socialism. He was just telling people what they wanted. That he was going to change the corrupt system, and he was going to put poor people in power. He started like that. But when he arrived to power, he started changing the discussion and changing his rhetoric into a more socialist way, which actually had always been his goal. Only that he was not just touching it superficially in the campaign. So people, when he started his presidency in 1999, he was like the new guy that actually came from a poor background. He was a military, and people saw him, and actually he was really, really charismatic. Chavez was rhetoric. He could sell you rocks, and you will buy them. So he sold everything he could to the poor people. And one of his key policies was to decentralize power, which, in classic liberal terms, decentralizing power sounds good because you take power from the central government. But he tried to decentralize power to give it to the poor people, to the how he should say, to the people. And he actually never did it that way. He had all the power in the government, in the central government, but he just gave a fiction to the poor people that they had power. But in the meantime, he was just taking over the whole industry. And like I told you, he managed by his rhetoric and his charismatic to make everyone that followed him to also follow socialism. You used to hear Chavistas in Venezuela saying that socialism is great, but they actually never read anything about socialism. They were just following what Chavez said. So it was a mixture of his powerful, charismatic character and all the policies that and the background of the governments before him that allow him to get to power.
Okay, so coming back to where we were a few minutes ago, he basically, to use the vernacular term in English, he sells people a bill of goods. He tells them what they want to hear. He gets in power, Then it becomes clear, okay, what you're going to get is substantially different. But it's been 20 years. So how is it possible that system is still in place 20 years later? If 90% of the people are living in extreme poverty, why no change?
Well, the key factor here is when Chavez died. So while Chavez was living, he could maintain the fictional show where everything was okay in Venezuela, what it wasn't, because of his charismatic character. But when he died and he left Maduro as the successor, Maduro is a completely different guy. He's zero charismatic, but he is willing to use weapons to maintain power. So everyone in Venezuela knows that the system is terrible. They know that they are living poor, but they are also living in a culture of fear. So besides of being dependent towards the central government because of this social programs that Chavez created that make almost the whole population to live dependent on these social programs. Maduro is also using weapons through these gangs called colectivos, that if your audience doesn't know what colectivos are, it's just like a local government thought. Sorry for my English in that word, but it's like mafias that the government controls and keep everyone in touch in the district. So it's like he's using fear towards the population so they cannot revolt. And all the weapons are in the government hands. So it's really difficult for someone to trying to overcome a dictatorship while also trying to feed their own family. So it's like you have people that are just struggling to live day by day, in a case by case, like trying to gain money or trying to find a way to achieve food or other services, and they don't have time to, start a revolution against Maduro.
I mean, I just want to drill down on that just a little bit, because I think I have a pretty good picture in my head of what happens to you in Venezuela if you try to buck the government from a lot of time abroad. But the average American maybe doesn't understand that. If you're back on the ground in Venezuela right now, talking like this and advocating for change, what happens to you?
Oh, I mean, right now, with my background, because I used to be a political activist in Venezuela, and with everything I'm doing right now, if I put a step in Maiquetía, which is the main airport in Venezuela, you can be sure that as soon as they see my name and they get the information of who I am, I will probably just go to jail. I will even leave the airport without going to jail. So, to prison. Sorry, jail sometimes for us in the Spanish is really difficult. You hear jail and you hear like the university. So you go to prison, and that's what happens in Venezuela. You have a lot of people that are political prisoners from the government. So if you try to go and make a political statement unless you're like protected in somehow, or the government actually don't see you as a threat, you will get in prison. So it's a trend like you have to choose wherever I go to prison, or I just try to live my way, Maduro do his own thing, and just try to feed my family. So that's the usual that Venezuelans do in my country.
Right. I mean, the average guy, so like exactly what you just said, right? I got kids, I got a wife, I got responsibilities, so I might want the system to change, but I got to make a hard calculus every day. Am I going to stick my head up and probably be done, or am I just going to try to get through this? When you say go to prison, I mean, what we're talking about is there isn't any trial, there isn't any right to defend yourself. You just go away.
That's a joke in Venezuela. I mean, there is no procedure, a legal procedure that you usually see in a democratic country. I mean, the government just picks you. They say that maybe you're a terrorist or you are making some arrangements to overthrow the government, and they just put you in prison. And it doesn't matter how fake it is. It doesn't matter how many lawyers you have. You're going to stay in prison. And that's the reality of many political prisoners from the Maduro regime. We all know they shouldn't be prisoners, but they are. And they most likely and unfortunately they will continue to be in prison from Maduro.
Yeah, well,
and another quick thing. I mean, when you say like you saying the example, you're a father of the family and you're just providing for it. You reach a moment you have to leave that reality, and that's how you see that almost 5 million Venezuelans have left the country in the last years. And there is a study from the United Nations that in this year, at the end of 2020. The situation continues like it is, the amount of Venezuelans that will leave the country will be higher than the Syrian refugees. So Venezuela will achieve an unfortunately situation where we'll be the first number one country of refugees in the world. So that's a really sad reality.
Right. And we should add, I think, that, when you get locked up and your rights are taken away and you're locked up for who knows how long, you may also be beaten up and tortured while you're in prison as well. I mean,
that's a fact. That's a fact. They don't care about the means to break your mind. They charge everything against you. There are cases of, let's not be too explicit here in the show, but they use electricity in every single part of your body to charge against you, and they even rape you. They just do a lot of horrible things to prisoners, and you have plenty of testimonies of prisoners that got out because the government maybe just negotiates by name, because that's another thing. They use political prisoners as coins, like they can negotiate things with them. So you got a lot of testimonies that people can take a look at what they suffered while they were in prison.
Right. I've also seen references to the fact that when there are demonstrations, people brave enough to get out in the streets and so forth, that these thugs that you made reference to earlier will just come beat you up in the street as well.
Yes. I mean, when I was in 2017, which was one of the major years of protests against Maduro, I was like right in the middle of it because I used to be like a political active student. So one of my key roles was to manage my college, my school, and go out to protest. So I was like responsible of the names of my school. And you get, when the day finish, you start seeing the message and the calls, and you start seeing like, hey, the colectivos, which is this kind of from the government, they robbed my phone and they beat me up, or the colectivos you see in the news that they start shooting at the protest. I mean, they start like free fire shooting, and well, someone gets killed. In 2017, a lot of young people got killed, a lot of people got killed, because when you go outside, that's one of the major, problems when you go outside. That's why maybe you see right now that not many people go out, because you have to face a choice. Okay, I go out and I protest against Maduro, well, I will probably get killed. And outside, you never know who can get killed, because it's like, a video game. Just these bullets flying in the air, and you don't know what is going to happen. And if not a bullet, maybe you get like choked because of the tear gas, because government also use like a deficient tear gas, which expired. So you get poisoned with this tear gas. There is plenty of situations that make people think twice before going out.
Right. So 20 years on, we got a government that said they were all about the people, and this was how they were going to help the people. And now, when the people don't want them anymore, they're going to get shot, gassed, and imprisoned.
Yep.
So
yep.
I know that you are very active. You're in the States. You're traveling and speaking. If folks want to follow you and reach out to you, I want you to tell them how to do that. I also am under the impression that you're working with another guy, Jorge Galicia.
Yes.
Is that right? And
yes, we're in that.
So how do listeners who are outraged by this and want to know more and want to help you and interact with you, how do they get to you guys?
My friend and I, Jorge Galicia, we're both in the same project, which is the Venezuela project from the Fund for American Studies. Jorge is in charge of like the west part of the country. He lives in Phoenix, Arizona, and I'm in charge of the east part of the country because I live in Washington, D.C. So depending on the engagement, Jorge can go or I can go. So you can find all the information in the webpage of the Fund for American Studies and the section of Venezuela project. When you go to the main webpage, there is a banner right there that takes you to the Venezuelan project. And also, if you want to follow us in the social media, you can follow Jorge with his Jorge Galicia 95. My name is Andres Guilarte. Jorge Galicia is...
Jorge's name is spelled Jorge?
Yes.
Galicia. Is that right?
Yeah, I help you with my last name, so give me a hand with it.
Together we'll make it through this, brother.
Thank you. So yeah, that's the part of social media from Jorge, and you have the 95 to his name and his last, and then you have mine, which is Andres 7 Guilarte. Is spelled correctly?
Is your last name one L or two L's?
One L.
All right, one L. Then you got it right and I got it wrong. Andres, I want to thank you very much for your time. And I also want to pass this along to Jorge that we just barely scratched the surface on this. So I would love to have you guys come back on and let's follow this. This has gone on too long and we need to be able to have a drink in a free Caracas one of these days.
Oh, no, for sure. So thank you so much, Sam, for the opportunity here. Thanks so much for the audience. Have the interest of knowing what is going on in my country. And you can be sure that once with the Venezuela conquest freedom again, I'm going to invite you a drink in Caracas, and you're going to love it because Caracas is beautiful.
I look forward to it. And thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time on Ground Truth.